John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. We have never seen anything like it before in an American courtroom. A man murdered in a road rage incident nearly 4 years ago, addressing the court at the sentencing for the man who shot and killed him. Using artificial intelligence, Christopher Pelkey, a veteran, addressed the court essentially from the grave. His sister wrote the words that her brother spoke.
Hello. Just to be clear for everyone seeing this, I am a version of Chris Pelkey recreated through AI that uses my picture and my voice profile to Gabriel Horcasitas, the man who shot me. It is a shame we encountered each other that day in those circumstances. In another life, we probably could have been friends. I believe in forgiveness and in God who forgives. I always have, and I still do. Thank you to everyone for being here. It means more than you know. Well, I'm gonna go fishing now. Love you all. See you on the other side.
It was a remarkable moment, but no doubt raises enormous issues for the legal system. Attorney Jason Lamm, who represented the defendant, will join us in a moment. He has a profound concern about the use of AI technology in court, particularly in this case. But we're going to begin with Christopher Pelkey's sister, Stacey Wells, who crafted that statement. Stacey joins me now on Newsmaker. Great to see you. Stacey, I have to tell you, in all honesty, I got very emotional watching that the first time I saw it. How did you come up with the idea? Do you remember the moment that it came to you, I think this is what I'm going to do?
It was about a week and a half before sentencing, after we had gathered about 49 other letters that were being sent to the judge. It was time for me to write what I was going to say. I was going to speak in person with 10 other people on May 1st. And I was having trouble writing what I wanted to say because I just kept feeling like it was at odds to what Chris might say or what he would think about this whole thing. And it just didn't feel authentic to not have his opinions and his voice heard. So while struggling, trying to write what I wanted to say, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, why can't I tell the judge what I think Chris would say? In Arizona, we're allowed to do that. We're protected under the Arizona Victims' Bill of Rights to say whatever we would like to say at sentencing.
Even if it's AI?
In any form and any presentation manner that you want to submit, we're protected to be able to do that. So I said, well, I'm going to write down what I think Chris would have said or wanted the judge to know about his moral tenets, because they were at such odds with what I was going to say and wanted to say and what I actually did say. I spoke for myself.
So would you say that you would have been angrier and tougher on the accused, on the defendant, Mr. Horcasitas, than Chris would have been?
Yes, and in fact, my impact statement, which preceded showing Chris's, was harsher and tougher and brutal.
What did you want?
I wanted the max. I asked for that.
Which would have been?
And I asked for 10.5 years specifically.
Chris talked about forgiveness. It's in his video. How much impact do you think that had on the judge, or had the judge already made the decision on sentencing before that video was played in court?
I don't believe that the judge finished making his mind up about sentencing until both sides went. Our side was able to go, and then also the defendant's side was able to go and read their support statements. But I believe that our body of work, the entire 49 letters, 10 impact statements, 65 pictures, everything shown with Chris's capstone of his AI video, was a powerful presentation of our grief and our loss that we felt and presented to the judge that I believe he heard.
So Chris talked about forgiveness, but in the end, the judge sentenced Mr. Horcasitas to 10.5 years. That was the max. So in the end, if Chris wanted to mitigate that sentence, he didn't get what he wanted.
Well, it's interesting because what Chris doesn't say, and the judge even picked up on this, is that Chris does not ask for a number of years. And I didn't script him to say an opinion about that because I don't know how many years he would want, whether it would be 7 or whether it would be 10.5. He believed a lot in forgiveness and in God and those tenets, but he also believed in accountability and justice. So I do firmly believe that he would want a sentence. I just don't know what that would have been, so I didn't put it in there.
How did you craft the words that Chris would say?
I had to detach from myself because I do not forgive the shooter. I'm still working towards that. And in order to write what I thought Chris would think about this whole thing, I had to really think about his moral tenets and his ethics and what he stood for. And thankfully, he was a very simple person. He was very black and white, and you knew where he stood on almost every issue.
You tried to put yourself in Chris's mind.
I tried to channel Chris's thoughts and what we know about him in his 37 years of life, and he lived with me many times in his life and was living with me up until he passed away. I knew that giving him a platform to let him speak about what he believed in life was the right thing to do, and I had to put my own thoughts aside and channel those and echo those through my own impact statement, which I made before his.
You said that you are not there yet to forgive the man who took Chris's life. Do you think you ever will?
For me, freedom comes through action, not through forgiveness. Not yet, anyway. I'm finding much more healing and much more power of Chris's life and of our healing and my own healing through the action that we've been able to take to make Chris's life matter in this world and what he stood for heard. And that gives me greater comfort than any forgiveness I think would bring me.
I want to bring in the conversation Jason Lamm, who is the attorney for Gabriel Horcasitas. Jason, thanks for being with us on Newsmaker. Really appreciate it. When that played in court, you didn't know it was coming.
No, we did not know it was coming, and frankly, we're not required to be alerted that it is forthcoming.
How did it strike you when you saw it?
To be honest with you, it felt cringe. And I appreciate the fact that there's grief and there's pain and there's a need for catharsis. But in a court of law, there's also a need for authenticity. I could have created a similar AI video of what I thought Chris Pelkey would have said and felt. It's not saying I would have done that, but it is as authentic as Geppetto putting words in the mouth of Pinocchio. So no one really knows what he would have said, and I can appreciate the emotion and the pain, but the expression of that pain, and to the extent that the judge relied on it, may have constituted legal error. And that's something that's going to have to be evaluated in future appellate proceedings.
So you think there is an appellate issue based on what happened at the sentencing and the hearing?
Without getting too much in the legal weeds, the crime actually carries a sentence of 7 to 21 years. But because the prosecution failed to file certain documentation, the limit was 10 and a half, which means the judge could not find aggravation. He could not use pain and grief to increase the sentence. And while the judge found 3 mitigating factors, things that would reduce the sentence, to the extent that he relied on the AI to make a finding of emotional harm, that could well constitute the legal error that gets my client a new trial.
Could you tell that the judge was moved by what he saw? Because apparently he said so. When you watch this, were you like, this is going to be interesting?
Well, certainly I sat back and I knew it was going to be interesting, but just as you said at the top of the show, when I watched the video, it had a lot of effect on your emotional state, and you had to think it did on the judge as well. And to erase any doubt, he articulated as much. He said, I love the AI, and he made a connection with Chris. The question is it proper for the judge to rely on that information to negate the mitigating factors when he legally couldn't do so, and it was respectfully untethered to anything that we know Chris Pelkey would have said, because simply put, he's not with us to say it himself.
Stacey, as you listen to Jason, and you guys, were at opposite ends of the courtroom, opposite tables. What are your thoughts when you hear what Jason's saying? Because there are profound implications going forward, regardless of your own situation and the case of your brother.
I think it's quite tone deaf to call it cringe and to say that the defense could have, if they wanted to, crafted something with equal weight to it. They didn't know Chris at all. In fact, the judge only knew Chris from his autopsy photo and from the security camera footage of him being blown away in the street. And certainly Mr. Lamm didn't know him either. So he lived with my family. He was a third parent to my children. I grew up with him and saw him through all facets of his life. In fact, after we created this and received the controversy back from some people in society about, oh, well, that's very interesting. How would you know he would have said that? We actually trained AI, my husband did, on Chris's sentiment and Chris's digital legacy that he's left in some videos that are out there on the internet about him.
Yeah.
And it showed that there was a 92% accuracy in what Chris's avatar said that I scripted him to opine about against his moral tenets and legacy that you can find out there on the internet right now.
I want to show one of those too, and then I'll get your reaction, Jason, to this. This was also played in court. This is video of Chris talking about his military service and his relationship to God. Take a look.
But here is insight into who I actually was in real life. Take a look.
All right, I'm Chris Pelkey. I served with the United States Army in the infantry. I'm from upstate New York. And what else?
Where'd you deploy?
Where'd I deploy? I went to Baghdad in 2006, 2008, and then I went to Afghanistan in 09 to 10. I think the number one thing is God. Is having a relationship with the Lord and being close with Him, and that He really is the only answer to every problem we have, everything we go through. We got to do it with Jesus at our side.
So, as you can see from my video, I recorded in 2021. This here is a true representation of who I was, you know, not how the courtroom portrayed me.
Jason, was that out of bounds to show that? Or is that in fair play in terms of victim impact statement?
Well, victims have broad rights under the Arizona Constitution, and I don't take anything away from that, and really the rules of evidence don't apply at sentencing. However, you have to look at the data that went into the AI, and I'm just going to say, for purposes of today, without getting into the weeds, there are some factual discrepancies that we have. It doesn't matter what they are today. But I also, being someone who's experienced profound loss, understand the emotional filter as to how we look at loved ones who we've lost. And there's things that we want to accentuate, the positive, and there are other things that are not as desirable to remember. So even if we talk about a 92% accuracy, there is a reasonable doubt. And that's what due process goes to on behalf of someone who is facing a criminal charge under the United States Constitution. But again, we have to look at the data that went in and the source of the contributor. I don't doubt the kind, pure, loving intentions, and as I said earlier, the cathartic value and need for healing. But to use this in a legal environment is a very, very different situation when everything is measured against the Constitution of the United States to ensure fairness and due process to a defendant. And I would add, the cases in Arizona make very clear that in the circumstances of a clash between a defendant's rights and a victim's rights, the defendant's rights are paramount.
Stacey, do you believe justice was served here?
I believe we got the justice that was available to us. The shooter was actually charged with first-degree murder and second-degree murder in his first trial. This was a second trial that gave him manslaughter.
That's right.
And I believe that we got the most justice that we were able to get from the way that things happened in the courtroom and the injustices that we believe happened. We got the most out of what we were able to make of the sentence in the second trial.
Jason, before we go to break here on Newsmaker, just quickly, how much, if you were to give a percentage, 1 to 100%, how much did this weigh on the judge and what the judge eventually rendered as a punishment, which was 10.5 years in prison for Mr. Horcasitas, your client?
I can't speculate with any precision, but the fact that the judge relied on it in some fashion, as he articulated on the record, in a manner that negated the 3 separate mitigating factors that he found, in my mind, it's something that an appellate court will seriously need to scrutinize. And unless it can be shown beyond a reasonable doubt that it's harmless, and that's the legal jargon for it, that may require a new sentencing, and we'll be back in that courtroom in about 12 to 24 months.
When you came up with this, it was your husband who actually put it together, right?
Yes, my husband and a colleague of ours, Scott Yenser, they did the technological aspect of it. My husband used the photo from his funeral, and he trained an AI clone voice off of the video that it splices to in the AI that's shown, an interview that my brother did before he passed away. And it used the words that I scripted, and it was really a presentation tool. I'm not really sure how this is much more different than if I got up there and read a letter with Chris's picture behind me. I think it's controversial.
I guess the question is, people will say, well, how can you divine what Chris would have said in his own words? They're really your words, trying to figure out what Chris would have said. That's where I think some people get conflicted. You understand that?
Of course. I think it is difficult for people that are not in a family or in a close relationship with others to say, well, how do you know he would say that? But I challenge you to think about your own mother or father or children or your spouse, and you can hear jokes that they would say. I didn't wrestle with what I believe Chris would have thought about this and what I wrote for his AI avatar to say at all. I wrote that in 5 minutes, and I had actually been writing my own impact statement since the first trial for over 2 years.
Jason, what do you think the implications are more broadly for the legal system with AI becoming much more a part of our lives in every facet of our lives?
Well, I think this is an important bellwether case to look at, but as you just pointed out so astutely, what are the broader implications? Can police craft an AI video of a suspect's interview? Can I, as an attorney, present a statement from a witness as to what I think the witness will say? Can I have AI software scan a police report and then turn it into a presentation? The problem is we don't have authenticity. And yes, it's one thing to do a presentation, a motivational speech, but we have to look at the stakes that are at issue. We have to look at fundamental liberties and rights of people charged with crimes in the United States are at issue. And I think really that's where the scrutiny is going to come in. And if the court is going to allow this, we would expect there to be very, very tight guardrails and limitations placed on it, because unfortunately there are people who will abuse the technology.
We have always in court at trial had recreations where there's been computer animation used that tries to approximate what happened at a crime scene so the jury can see what they think happened. That's been admissible for years. How is this different?
Because a recreation is based on finite data points. Data is objective. And again, I appreciate the sentiment and the cathartic need behind this. But when we are speculating or believing what someone might say, feel, or think based on our emotional filters, it really just becomes a crapshoot. And there's no reliability, just like scientific evidence, whether it's DNA, whether it's fingerprints, or what have you, has to go through rigorous scrutiny by a trial judge before it's allowed in.
Let me show one more, and this was the one for just a layperson looking at this, that I wondered if it was prejudicial in some way. It was a statement where Chris thanks the judge. Take a look. This is number 3.
Can't tell you how humbled I am for those that spoke up for me, everyone who flew in, took off work, those who are watching this remotely, and for everyone who has supported my family and loved ones through 3.5 years and 2 trials. I wish I could be with you all today. To Your Honor, Judge Lang, thank you for making yourself available to see this case to the end, especially when the rescheduled trial conflicted with your daughter's spring break.
Did you think, Jason, that that was over the top, that it's pandering to the judge, and did it bother you?
Well, John, I'm really glad that you said the word pandering first before I did. It was on the tip of my tongue.
I mean it with no disrespect. I'm just.
Nor do I, but to play directly to the judge's emotion. A judge whom Chris Pelkey never met.
This kind of gets at the whole issue.
That's the issue there. And, everything else, thanking people, I think that's appropriate in a private setting, and I'm sure that family members appreciated it. I know that I would appreciate that. But speaking directly to a judge whom Chris Pelkey never met, and knowing about the judge's availability due to personal conflicts, I felt that it went too far. That's just my opinion.
Stacey, you included it. I'll ask you why, but I wanted to also point out your family, you did not let them know this was coming. You wanted their reaction to be organic. Is that a good way to put it?
That's true, yes, but also more so to shield them from the risk take that this was.
You knew it was a high wire act.
Well, I also knew that Mr. Lamm objected to everything in 5.5 and 3.5 weeks of 2 trials that I sat through, and he was relentless. And I
that
knew
is
that
his job. You know that.
Indeed it is.
Yeah.
But it was not lost on me that that was a very real possibility, and I wanted to shield them from the worry of that so that they could make their own impact statements and tell their truth and do their healing piece to the judge that day.
So to put that part in about the judge, how did you come up with that, and what was the motive?
The motive was that our first judge in the first trial was very defense-centric. We felt like everything was going their way. Everything was just very defense sympathetic. And we were quite frustrated. And you cannot show any emotion in a courtroom or you will cause a mistrial, we're instructed. So by the time we got to the second trial under this different judge, Judge Lang, we were so thankful that he saw us. Every time we entered his courtroom, he would read the Arizona Victims' Bill of Rights for any time he opened his courtroom. And we're like, this judge really sees victims. And we were so thankful to have him through the end of the trial that every one of our family members and people that were involved and invested in this court were thankful to have him. We needed to let him know that. And I know Chris would have been thankful as well that he wanted to see this to the end.
You realize that you are kind of a pioneer here. This has never happened. We don't even believe it's happened worldwide in a courtroom. What do you want people to take from this?
Well, there are 2 things. The reason I still talk about this is, number one, if anybody learns Chris's name and they go to his own Facebook page or they go and find his couple YouTube videos that are out there about him from when he was alive, and they learn from his own hand what he was about and what he stood for, Chris would have great comfort knowing that one more person learned that he loved God and he loved people, and we should do that to each other.
I didn't tell you at the top. I'm sorry for your loss of Chris.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you being here. Jason, I'm going to give you the last word. Implications, thoughts, as we close this out.
Again, AI is a very powerful tool, but if it's not used ethically and judiciously, it may cause more harm than good. And this is one of those great learning moments for our society, as we have for hundreds of years with new technology. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And if it proves that this is a wrong way, I can't imagine the pain that will be caused when wounds are ripped open and my client has to be resentenced all over again.
Jason, anything in the court proceedings, and we should point out the jury never heard any of this, only the judge at sentence, correct?
Correct. There was a lot of evidence during the trial that the judge did not allow in about Chris Pelkey's past. That obviously is something that an appellate court is going to decide. Now, my client was initially found not guilty of first-degree and second-degree murder, and the reason there was a new trial is because the prosecutor did not turn over the contents of Christopher Pelkey's cell phone. And there were things in there that we were entitled to under the law. The judge followed the law and he ordered a new trial. But because of double jeopardy, first and second degree murder were off the table, and manslaughter was then the only charge that was available.
This, just so people know who are watching, the 2 men were stopped at a red light at Gilbert and Germain Road. And Chris Pelkey was shot after he got out of his truck and started walking toward Mr. Horkosidas' car. Mr. Horkosidas apparently felt threatened and opened fire. Is that fair, that characterization?
I can't speak to his mental state. However, Mr. Lamm presented a very suggestive photograph during the trial, which was a complete Photoshop of what he believed and his client believed he felt in that moment, which was a very imposing figure photoshopped in, which was not real.
That Chris was the aggressor. That
Chris was up against his car. But the witnesses, the 12 witnesses in the trial, and also the closed-circuit TV security camera show that Chris didn't pass his own bumper of his car. So while he made an error in judgment in order to leave, while he made an error in judgment in order to leave his car, he did not approach the vehicle's car within arm's length at all.
Jason, you've got a different take on this.
Look, everyone's entitled to their view, but numerous witnesses said that Chris Pelkey got out of his car. He had his arms waving. He was yelling profanities at my client, engaging him. How close he got to my client's car, the witnesses said, some said he was right up against the window. And I appreciate this is painful and there's some things that we don't necessarily want to hear or think about. But a jury decided what they decided. So that's sort of irrelevant. But it's clear that Christopher Pelkey was the one who got out of his car and approached my client, who was seated in his driver's seat. The bottom line is, to everyone watching, please stay in your car. Nothing is worth it. If someone's honking at you or if you think they made a rude face to you, just leave it alone and live another day.
Yeah, I don't want to relitigate the case here because that's really for the courts, and we're focusing kind of on the AI part of it. We'll wrap it this way, Stacey. With what you put together with Chris, how certain are you that you got very close to what Chris would have said?
I have no edits or changes. If I could go back, I'd do it exactly the same way. I am completely at peace with what Chris said and how it reached the judge that day, and it humanized Chris. Even if this goes back to sentencing, I know that to resentencing, I know that in that day, in that moment, when we had our chance to be heard, we were heard in the most powerful way, and it connected humans, and it made people see each other like that.
Did it help you? There is no healing from something like this, but did it help you start to process what had happened?
Absolutely, and it did offer me healing, and my husband healing, going through the process of physically making it, and my brother and my son had seen it in court, and my mother, they have offered me such wonderful words of healing that this has brought them. So if for nothing else, this has moved our family, and it has captivated Chris's sentiments, and we're so thankful for that.
I really appreciate you both joining us on this. It's great to see you both, and really a wonderful conversation. Very important issue. Jason, thanks. Stacey, thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker.